Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. We've got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by author and president of HMA Public Relations, Scott Hanson, who discusses the inspiration behind both of his books, one of which being Who is Jim, which breaks down the stories behind Arizona's high school sports venues. We'll then be joined by Sedona Red Rock High School girls basketball coach Kirk Westervelt, who talks about coaching all three of his daughters throughout his coaching tenure over at Sedona. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Flagstaff boys basketball coach Nick Walton, who discusses taking over the program in 2016 and what we can expect from the Eagles this basketball season. All of that and a whole lot more right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Flagstaff High School boys basketball coach Nick Walton. Coach Walton, welcome onto the program.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Now, you're not a distant relative of Bill Walton, right?
I wish I was.
Then you may have got an opportunity to play in the NBA like his son.
Yeah, I wish I was, and I wish Luke was a close cousin, and I had that resource, but unfortunately, no relation, and no relation to the TV show either.
I grew up a Lakers fan, so I'm very familiar with Luke Walton, and I'm an avid college basketball fan, so I always love listening to Bill sort of ramble his way through a basketball game. It's always quite fun to hear what comes out of that guy's mouth.
Yeah, he does have some interesting comments, that's for sure, during the broadcast, and makes it lively, which is good sometimes. Other times you just have to shake it off.
Exactly. So yeah, you kind of go, all right, Bill, okay, whatever. But Coach, I want to thank you again for coming on the show this week to talk about the Flagstaff boys basketball program. We had Coach Johnson come on not too long ago to talk about the girls program. 2015, you started out, 2015, you take over the program. You started as the JV coach over at Flagstaff. You transition over to the varsity team. You do come into that varsity season in 2015/2016 with a very senior-heavy team. Did that experience, having guys who kind of have already been in the program, obviously they were familiar with you playing for the JV team, but did that sort of ease the transition into varsity from JV, having all those guys already kind of know what the program's all about?
Yeah, it really did. And I was lucky enough to have a great mentor in Coach Kirk, who had been here for so many years. So it was really, and in fact, he was an assistant when I played at Flag High too. So it was nice to transition in there. He did a great job with the program. And I was really lucky to have a great group of seniors that year that, you're right, the experience was there. It was nice not having to change too much of what was already working. The saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So we did have a great year that year, and that senior leadership was fantastic. And it was really nice because the younger kids coming through the program got to see that and got to learn from their example. So that was huge for my first year for sure.
As you mentioned, you were obviously very familiar with the program even before becoming the JV coach. As you just mentioned, you played at Flagstaff High School. What got you started in coaching, and how did you get started on coaching the JV team over at Flagstaff?
It was something that I always wanted to do and had an interest in doing. I like I said, I've had some really good mentors. One also being Coach Mike Moran at the Coconino program. I actually played for Coach Moran for 3 years as well. Just learning from them as a high school player was really impressed with the things that they taught me. And it was always something that I wanted to, if I had the ability to be able to give back to the community, give back to kids, and just working with young men. And it just so happened that there was a opening at the school and the timing was right, and was able to sneak in there. And I was really grateful that Coach Kirk offered me the opportunity to join the JV program and learn the ropes and learn from him. And it's just worked out really well. I've been very fortunate to be able to do this for as long as I have.
Yes, Coach Moran is a great man. I got an opportunity to speak with him about a month ago, talked about his upcoming basketball season with the Coconino Panthers. Another guy, wealth of knowledge, as you said, just quite a mentor and a guy who really knows what he's talking about. And, Coach, you take over the program. What's sort of one thing that you've been emphasizing to your players as they go through your program?
We just really want people to come in and work hard. It's interesting. I've learned over the years the dynamic of the team that comes in. It seems like each year is different, and you have a niche that occurs each year. And I don't know if that's just unique to the area that we live in, or it's just the way it is, but it just seems like each year there's something special and unique for each team. Maybe it's, you got some height this year, the next year you don't have as much height, but you got a lot of speed and great guard play. And so it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the challenge of trying to learn what's going to be our niche, what's going to help us be successful. But at the end of the day, every kid that comes through Flagstaff High School, we know they're going to have high character. They're going to work hard. They're just going to play hard because they love the game. They love the opportunity to play. And so we just really preach that. Just show up ready to work, and things will go in our favor.
It's kind of funny. You talk about that niche and you talk about every year being different. But one of the things that has stayed relatively consistent with Flagstaff is the height of your players. When I was in high school, the two tallest guys that we had were 6'2" and I think 6'1". But you go in throughout your years, even starting out, you had a player who was 6'6", and currently on the roster, you have a player who's 6'6", 6'3", 6'1". So I think my question kind of goes like this, Coach. What are you feeding those kids up in Flagstaff?
Well, I don't know. I'd have to ask their parents what they're doing, but we have been fortunate the last couple of years to have a little bit of height. Even when I was first starting out, we had a couple kids that had some height on it. But you're right. We got you're probably referring to big Nick Morrow this year, who he's pushing probably 6'7", maybe it's a little bit more. And it helps that he starts at defensive end on the football team too. So. But it's not just that they're, the genes, they got height, but those kids they work hard in the weight room, and they get the strength and conditioning that they need to use the heights to their advantage.
Again, we were speaking with Flagstaff boys basketball coach Nick Walton, and very much so. Height doesn't necessarily transition into talent, but you have been lucky to have both of them, players who are very tall and very talented. Solid season last year from the Eagles in 2019, going 12-7 overall, earning a trip to the play-in round. You graduate some top scorers in Christian Lancaster and Tyler Setner, just to name a couple of the big names that you that you graduated last year. Who can we see step up in replacement of those guys?
Yeah, we're going to really miss Christian's guard play. He brought, again, it was trying to find your niche, and, he brought a very unique style to our game, his defensive play, and he did really well getting some points for us. And same with Tyler. Tyler did a great job on the glass for us. So they will be missed. But we're really looking forward for big things for Nick Morrow. I think he's going to have a stellar season this year. He's really come into his own. using that football background. He's going to be fun to watch. He's got his vertical up. He's getting up and down the floor great. So we're looking forward to him. Josh Leonards, one of our seniors coming back this year. Josh really started to turn it on last year towards the end. And it was unfortunate right before our state playoff game. He went down with an ankle injury. I think we were at Mingus is when it happened. But anyway, so we lost him during the state playoffs. But, he's looking really good. And then, of course, Nick Sneezy, who was our guard last year. He's back. We're lucky to have him. We're looking for big things from Nick as well.
Tyler Setner, one of the other fellow seniors that was able to graduate, as I mentioned earlier, signed a letter of intent to play at St. Ambrosia University. Any other players make that jump to the college level to play sports or even on the academic side?
All our guys did go on to go to college, which was great. Tyler is really the only one that I think is playing basketball at this moment. I had heard that Christian Lancaster had a couple opportunities to play, and I think he was looking at doing I think it was at Arizona Christian that he was looking to go through that program. Okay. Given the pandemic, I'm not exactly sure what's happened since then, but we were lucky. We had a good group of seniors. All those guys have gone on and are either attending college or doing service missions, things like that. So everybody's doing great.
Well, that's good to hear, Coach. Despite the guys maybe, some choosing the basketball route, some choosing, like you said, even serving a higher power or even just going for the academic route, taking your education to the next level is always great if you can make that happen. And it's good to hear that some of your guys are doing well and they're continuing their education or continuing their life in a very, very positive way. You do return, as you mentioned, Nick Sneezy, his junior year. You've got him for one more season. Josh Leonard's come back, as you mentioned. If I'm doing my math correctly, a lot of the seniors on this team were a part of your JV team when you were still coaching. So my question would be how have you seen those guys develop? And even some of the guys like Nick Sneezy, who's a little bit newer, how have you seen those guys develop into the players they are today?
Those guys, like I said, we're trying to find what the niche is every year. And, each one brings their own unique characteristic to the game. But these guys they love the game. And what's been awesome is, whether it's June ball or whether it's you doing a club thing, if they're going and playing in an AAU league down in the Valley or getting games in, what I've noticed is they love to be on the floor. And they want to be in the gym. And so that, I think, has been one of the biggest successes that we have seen as far as player development is they want to play. They want to play. They want to be with their buddies. They're all good friends, and they want to get in and play. And it's almost like I have to kick them out to, because they just want to be there and play. And, they would probably play all day if we would let them. Unfortunately, they got to go to class. But just having that dedication to wanting to come in, they want to get shots up. They just want to play. And watching that development has been really neat.
It's good to have that sort of passion for the sport. Like you mentioned, kids who just want to stay in the gym, who want to keep playing basketball, who want to get the opportunity to play basketball, whether it's 1-on-1 or 5-on-5 against, Coconino, for example. It's good to have that passion for the sport, and it helps to grow the sport as well. Your JV and freshman squads also had good seasons last year. How has the collaboration been at the lower levels, considering you started as a JV coach?
It's been awesome. I feel very lucky to have a great staff. Coach Ernie Rice, he does our freshman program. He was my freshman football coach when I was at the school. He's been there for a really long time. But that he's got a tremendous gift of working with the young kids and introducing them to our program and the expectations. We got Coach Bridger Hershey this year, who'll be running the JV program, who brings a great skill set to our program. And what's nice is we're able to structure our practices. I don't know if it's maybe you could call it a facility burden that actually works to our advantage just because of the way the school gyms are set up. But I'm able to attend a lot of those practices and watch those kids play. and then attend in our practice as well. So as 3 programs, we're very close. And what you see at the varsity level, they're learning the basics and the principles at the freshman level. So by the time they get up to the varsity level, they're very familiar with what we need to do.
Preparation. Very much so. Like you said, building through that program, learning the plays that they're going to learn possibly at the varsity level. As you talked about, COVID-19 is obviously, unfortunately, still prevalent here in the state of Arizona and throughout the entire world, which is always great to talk about because I feel like I've been talking about COVID-19 since the show started. Coach, how have you been able to navigate a lot of those COVID restrictions? As you talked about, your guys want to get out there and play. They want to go back to the gym. How have you been able to sort of hold those practices, sort of scratch that itch of playing basketball while still trying to navigate all of the unfortunate restrictions that come with COVID-19?
Yeah, COVID, it's been tough. It's presented a very unique challenge, at least to our program. I think Coach Johnson would also agree with the girls program up here and probably the coaches at Coconino as well. Flagstaff, we've been, I think, a little behind the curve as far as trying to get things rolling, only because of, it's just the way it is. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the situation that we got. But what I've been really impressed with is, like I said, the kids want to play. And in order to play, you're right, we do have some pretty strict protocols that are in place. And, the past year, it's been just in the world and in the United States, whether whatever your political opinion is or whatever your opinion is on the virus, the fact of the matter is we have some restrictions to keep everybody safe. And I've been really impressed with the players and the parents to understand that, hey, the AIA wants this and our school district wants this. So if we want to play, we got to do it. And we've had no problems. The kids have all bought in when we're doing we started out with real basic workouts, proper social distancing, following CDC guidelines, masked when we're not working out, washing hands, all that stuff that we hear about all the time. And it's been nice to watch the players go, hey, we want to play. And so we're going to buy in, and, it doesn't matter what we think, this is what needs to happen to make a season happen. And so we've been doing it. We just started practices this week. So we're lucky that we're able to practice. And, as far as I know, we're still planning on having a season. I know it's getting pushed back a little bit, but we'll be happy to play when the time comes. That's for sure.
Not to quote High School Musical, but we are definitely all in this together. And seems like you guys have been buying into it and wearing the masks, taking the protocols very seriously to make sure that when the winter season rolls around, you guys are ready to go. COVID county numbers are hopefully going to start making their way downward. But regardless, Coach, we're excited to get ready. I've got one more question for you before we let you go. Last year, tough matchups against Coconino, lost both matchups against the Panthers. I got to ask, though, you played for the school. You were the JV coach. Now you're the varsity coach. Does that rivalry with Coconino sort of get ramped up a little bit now that you're the head honcho of the varsity program?
The Flag High Coconino game, I tell you what, it's the best rivalry in sports, in my opinion. And I think it's one that maybe I wish more people could see it. And it's funny when people move here, and if they have the opportunity to attend, whether it's a football or basketball, volleyball, the report is the same. Holy smokes, that was a crazy environment. And I think a lot of that is credit to the community. People love the kids. They're supportive of the kids. They're supportive of both programs. And they want to see both programs do well. And so, yeah, I mean, part of I bleed green. I played green. And of course, I want to see Flag High do well. So I think there's always a little extra push to see you got us succeed in that game. But at the end of the day, what's really impressive is, although these kids battle it out on the court, you walk outside after the game and they're all hanging out. I mean, because they've been growing up together since they were little. They've been playing City League together. So, foes on the court, but when it's all said and done, I think at the end of the day, we're celebrating their successes, and I know they're celebrating ours as well.
The rivalry is very deep on the court, but of course, as you mentioned, brothers off of it. And Coach, we're excited to see what happens. We're excited for the future matchup of Coconino and Flagstaff. Always a great rivalry here in Northern Arizona. And Coach Walton, I thank you very much for coming on the show and talking about your program. We look forward to seeing the Flagstaff Eagles when the winter season rolls around.
I sure appreciate you having me. And just real quick, want to say thank you to you and your media outlets, your media company that you work for. 2020 has been crazy, but what's really neat is to watch things that like you're doing, highlighting these kids. I mean, there's been some pretty impressive stuff in Northern Arizona with not just in Flagstaff, but all over Northern Arizona. These kids are doing great stuff. So thank you for putting this information out there and letting everybody know that even though there's been some darkness in 2020, there's definitely some light going on in Northern Arizona when it comes to prep sports. So thanks for having me. I appreciate the time, and thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you for the kind words, Coach. Anytime. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by author Scott Hanson, who will discuss both his books on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by author and president of HMA Public Relations, Scott Hanson. Scott, welcome onto the show.
Well, thank you, and Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year, very much so, Scott. Hopefully year 2020, finally it's over. We can all forget 2020. We're into 2021, and hopefully there will be no more pandemic. Fingers crossed.
I hope so. Sooner the better.
Exactly. But Scott, you have an extensive background in sports. You started like many people, including myself, you started playing high school sports. You grew up in the Phoenix area. You are a Arizonan. You're a native Arizonan. Going past high school, when you graduated high school, you attended Northern Arizona University, did not play sports collegiately, but somebody told you that refereeing, becoming an official, would be a great way to stay in sports, make a little money while you're in college as well. And you did that you're still refereeing 30 plus years later. What kept you in high school sports? What kept you wanting to be an official?
Well, I think the first thing was when I was in college, I needed the money.
Of course.
And so I continue to get better at it, improve. And, I'm just a huge sports fan. So as I watch sports, no matter what sport it is, I've often thought, if you're going to criticize, you maybe want to be able to contribute as well. Right. And I'm so passionate about high school sports. I think in many cases, it's the last time that anybody gets to participate in organized sports. And it's maybe the last true competition before you get to college and all the other things that go in with all of that. And the high school student athlete really is a student athlete. And the camaraderie and the friendships and the stories and the things that I've been able to develop over my 35 or whatever years officiating, you can't even put a price tag on.
Now, you've been officiating, like I mentioned, since you were a freshman in college, relatively young, in your either late teens or early 20s. What sort of life lessons have you learned being an official over those years?
Well, I think one is that you're not perfect. Two, you have to be very humble. And you have to be a good communicator, I think, to be effective in officiating. So much of what we do is just communicating with the kids and with the coaches. And that, I think, has parlayed into my professional career as well. One of the things that we do is issue management and crisis communication. Right. And I feel like I have a lot of firsthand experience of that, talking to coaches who might not be happy, or listening to disgruntled parents who might not understand the situation or know the rules or whatever, or explaining to a high school athlete what has just happened and why they lost 15 yards or why they're safe or out or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. As I mentioned, you're the president of a public relations company, so obviously you're able to translate that communication that you've learned throughout the years, as you say, talking to a head coach, talking to a disgruntled parent, talking to a player, just being as open and being as completely truthful and honest as you can and communicating quite well. The first time when I took this job here in Cottonwood, the first thing that I was ever handed when I got this job was your book, What is Jim? It was given to me by one of our owners, Jackie Bessler. When I first started here, we were at dinner at Colt Grill when I was getting ready to take over as the news editor and voice of the Mingus Marauders. And the book is fascinating. It covers gyms and basketball courts, baseball fields, football fields. It covers who they're named after. The idea for the book came from funny enough, when you were an umpire, when you were refereeing a football game at Cactus High School. Yes. The idea for the book came up of, you had no idea why the field at at Cactus High School was called M.L. Huber.
Correct.
And so that's what kind of sparked the idea. But you have that sort of like curiosity, but what turned that curiosity into a book?
Well, I think one is that I'm an Arizona native. I love Arizona. I love Arizona history. And I think the curiosity continued to grow. First, it was at Cactus High School, and then it was at Independence High School, and then it was at Maryvale High School. And then I started thinking back, oh man, when I was first starting to officiate in high school, in college, I was at Cromer Stadium in Flagstaff. And who was Cromer? And I remember there was a guy named Mike Cromer. He coached there, but was there a connection? And I don't know. And then I ran into the Arizona State historian, Marshall Trimble. Yep. And I said to Marshall, I've kind of come across this little project that you might be interested in. And I explained to him what I was doing, or not doing, just what I had stumbled upon. And he said, no, Scott, he says, you've got to write a book. He says, if you don't do it, it will become lost Arizona history. Yeah. And that was sort of the genesis. I said, okay, Marshall, well, I'll tell you what, I'll write the book if you write the foreword to the book. He goes, okay. 3 days later, I have the foreword to the book from Marshall. And I knew then, oh boy, now I really have to write a book.
Well, especially if he took that time to write the foreword, you can't just have it hovering around. But, this very much is less of a book and more of a textbook of just the history of all of these venues here in Arizona, and anybody who is interested in why Bright Field is called Bright Field at Mingus High School, why Cromer Field is called Cromer Field up in Coconino High School, or Bill Shepard Field in Prescott. Yes. You talk about that collaboration with, of course, Marshall Trimble. You also spoke with a whole lot of athletic directors, historians, people who attended the schools. How was that collaboration with all of those people? How did that go? How were you able to organize all of that when writing this book?
Well, I tell you, when I first started, I didn't have a process in place, and it took me 2+ years to write that first book, Who Was Jim? And part of the problem, or I don't know if it was really a problem, one of the things I came upon was that the athletic directors at these schools were new to the job. They were new. They were the next generation of educators, and they didn't know the stories. And so I had to dig deeper. I had to really talk to the librarians who had been at the school, or talk to some of the townspeople that knew the Sturgeon Cromers and Mike Cromers of the world, or down in Camp Verde, it was, who was Sam Hammerstrom? Who was he? And why'd they name that football field after him? And a lot of the current administration and faculty had no idea. So, and then on top of that, getting the photos of all of these people was another task. To talk to, maybe it was the family members I got to. But it was a lot of time on the phone and a lot of time on the internet, really reaching out to these school administrators, saying, "Hey, look, I'm just doing this because I love Arizona. I love Arizona high school sports, and I think you guys deserve to have your story told." And that's really what it came down to.
Yeah, very much so. When writing this book, what did it teach you about the history of Arizona in general?
Well, I think what I learned is that every school, every community has a story. They all do. They're all different, but there are some commonalities with a lot of them. The gym was named after the longtime coach, longtime athletic director, that type of thing. Same with the football fields or whatever. And I think even with the second book called What's Your Number, Sort of the same kind of a thing. It's the absolute superstar athlete that dominated as a high school athlete and then went on to college and maybe went on to the professional levels, whatever it might be, have their number retired at whatever school they're at. So I think the commonality is that, or what I really learned was that every school and every community has its own story, and they're all unique with some common threads.
Yeah, and you kind of talk about those common threads. When you look across here in the northern part of the state, as I mentioned, you've got Bright Field, Cromer Field over in Coconino, Bill Shepherd Field in Prescott. A lot of those guys were community-based people. Do you find a lot more fields named after sort of those community members in the smaller cities and counties and towns like Yavapai County or Coconino County, compared to, let's say, a larger, more incorporated area like Maricopa County, where you see a little bit, not necessarily, they're not like, they're obviously a part of the community, Sandra Day O'Connor School, for example. But do you see more of those direct community members in those smaller areas compared to the larger ones?
I think what I found, and this was sort of refreshing, is that the number of facilities, sports facilities that were named after people who just wrote the big check to have the gym built or whatever were much less than, for example, at Mayer High School, Dan Mather Field. He was just a longtime community supporter. Now they've got some other things there. Carrie Soriano Gym at Mayer High School. She was there for forever. Took the teams to the state tournament 25 times in volleyball. So, there's a mix there. Or you mentioned Bright Field. He was a volunteer and a huge part of the fabric of the school, but wasn't necessarily, the coach leading them to state championships and those types of things. So I think there's a little bit of a cross. You mentioned Shepherd Field, team doctor forever and ever in Prescott. Mm-hmm. So there is some of that. And it's the same thing at Sedona Red Rock High School. They have Doc Adams Jim, who he did coach, but he was a volunteer and really more for his presence than individual accomplishments. And I think in some of those smaller communities, you see a little bit more of that because, on a Friday night in Chino Valley, what else is there to do but go to the Chino Valley High School football game and watch the Cougars and try to root them on for a win? But you could say the same for Prescott. I think and Sedona the same. Once you get to Flagstaff, with the two schools, and it used to be three with the retired school now of Sonoma now gone. Right. There is much more of the high school is much more a driving force in what's going on in that individual community. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be the coach, the AD, the teacher, the athlete that had that impact on that particular community.
That's one of the things I very much love about this area here in northern Arizona. I'm in Yavapai County. I grew up in California, in Southern California, and it was a larger, more incorporated area. But we didn't have that. You didn't see a lot of that, shutting the town down to go watch the local high school team, as you mentioned with Chino Valley High School, or even here with Mingus. You're speaking with my colleague, Nick Yatsenko, who does color commentary with me during the Mingus games. He's from Cottonwood. He went to Mingus. His parents were showing me the photos of the town shutting down, of them hosting dinners at their restaurant, of just the community involvement with high school sports here in the northern part of the state. And it's quite inspiring. And it's very, very beautiful to see just that passion here. And it's not to say that it's not in other areas of the state or even in the country. Of course, we know Texas and the southern states love their high school football, but here in northern Arizona, it's such a tight-knit community where everybody knows everybody. Everybody wants to see the Coconino Flagstaff game or the Prescott Bradshaw Mountain game. They live for these rivalries. They all went to the schools. Now they're seeing their kids or even their grandkids go there. It's a wonderful tradition here in northern Arizona. You have written 2 books, as you can, for those of you who are listening on the radio, behind Scott, there are these beautiful banners of both his books. To his left, my right would be the What is Jim, and on the left is What's Your Number. But your second book, very similar origin story. This time you were on a baseball field at Paradise Valley High School where your umpire partner, Stan Hoover, pointed to right field just after the national anthem and said, Scott, there's your next book right there, those retired numbers. Was it easier researching the second time for these retired numbers, considering you had already written a very similar book the first time?
It was much easier because I had my process in place. I had already dealt with a lot of those athletic directors from my first book. And just to put a time frame into it, my second book took a year. My first one took 2+. Wow. So it was the same. I utilized the same process, reaching out to the athletic directors. And again, many of them had no idea who or why those numbers were retired. And, I learned a lot of fun things. I mean, there are a lot of districts that have policies against retiring numbers, so they don't have retired numbers. There are a couple of schools that have gotten around that. While they're not allowed to officially retire a number, they just don't issue it anymore. And I think what we also saw was that there's certain sports that are a little more attuned to the retirement of numbers. Baseball, there are more baseball numbers, 74 of them across the state that are retired. That's far more than anything else. The next would be football. There were 58 football numbers retired, again, across the state, with many schools and districts not allowing that to happen. So, there's some tremendous athletes from across Arizona that did not have their number retired.
We are speaking with author and president of HMA Public Relations, Scott Hanson. He has written 2 books, Who is Jim and What's Your Number? The books are out of print right now, but you can email Scott to pick up a copy. He'll be happy to send you a copy. I might have to shoot you an email a little later here, Scott, and try to get a copy of your second book. I only have the first one. But, if people are interested, Scott, could you please say your email here?
Yes. So it's S. Hanson, Hanson, @hmapr.com. Shoot me an email. The books are $20 a piece, and we'll get them shipped out to you. And there are some great stories, and it really is fascinating. And I love sort of becoming a de facto expert now on high school history, which I never would have expected to be the case. But you write a couple books about Arizona high school sports history, and all of a sudden people are asking you all the time about, hey, do you remember so-and-so? And do you remember so-and-so? And that's kind of a fun thing for me.
Yeah, very much so. And it's like I mentioned, it seems you have a very strong passion for high school sports. You love researching these topics. Now you are sort of that encyclopedia on gym names and retired numbers. But in the book, like I mentioned, you do cover, like I said, football fields, baseball fields, gymnasiums. You also cover mascots. It is a list of mascots at the back end of the book. It's got, Ray High School is the Bearcats. I got to ask, you got 2 books. Are we going to see the trilogy completed with What's Your Mascot, breaking down how the mascots got chosen and, where they're at now?
Philip, that might be the one. I've had so many of my umpire friends and referee people and say, Scott, you're writing another book. And I'm like, I think I would, but I don't know what to write it about. I kind of want to stay in the same topic area. And that might be it. That might just be it.
We may have completed the trilogy on Off the Bench, so you never know what you can expect on this show.
But you know what? That's a wonderful idea, and now I'm going to have to go beat you up over it because.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show and talk about your books. Again, if you want to purchase a copy, you do have to email Scott directly. They are $20 a piece. Again, it's S. Hanson, HMAPR at, help me out here with the back end.
It's S. Hanson at HMAPR.com.
Thank you very much, Scott. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. And like I said, if you are interested in the origins of your local school's gymnasium name or even why certain numbers are retired, go pick up Scott's books. They are wonderful reads. They are full of great history. And hopefully there will be a 3rd book coming very soon. But with that, Scott, thank you very much for coming on.
All right, Phil. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will talk with Sedona Red Rock High School girls basketball coach Kirk Westervelt about the upcoming basketball season. You're not going to want to miss that. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Sedona Red Rock High School girls basketball coach, Coach Kirk Westervelt. Coach, welcome onto the program.
Welcome. Thank you for having me, Philip.
Well, we are happy to have you. You have been a fixture in the city of Sedona for a very long time, as your dental practice has been there for quite some time now. And I guess I should be addressing you as Dr. Westervelt, but we're going to stick with Coach if that's okay.
And Coach is fine. I'd rather have Coach than Doctor.
But you made quite a name for yourself in the Sedona circuit of basketball. What got you started, and who are some of the inspirations for coaching?
Being a gym rat myself, and then having 3 daughters, and we started them out in ballet when they were younger, and they sort of graduated to more of a little physical sport in basketball, and They liked it. They played soccer as well. I coached them in soccer and softball, but they just seemed to like basketball and sort of stayed with it.
Yeah, it's sort of ballet could help with basketball a little bit, keep you pretty light on your feet for the most part. I know a lot of football players do it, but not sure maybe what the transition from ballet to basketball might be. But regardless, Scorpions last year finished 11-7, got a victory in the play-in round. Unfortunately, close loss to San Carlos, 63-66 in the state playoff game. What did you tell your seniors after that game, Coach?
Well, I only had one. It was my daughter, Mary. She was crying. But, that was a game we were up by 18. It's sort of like the Camp Verde game that we were up by 18 or 19, and they were in the state championship game that year, lost at the buzzer. But we couldn't close out teams. And it wasn't because we were out of shape, but starting 2 freshman guards, one being 2 point guards between Annabelle Cook and Helen, my daughter. Sometimes it's growth. And we were knocking at the door last year. I told them this year we're going to knock that son of a gun down. We're not just going to knock anymore. Hopefully we'll win the big games.
Yeah. Still an incredible season, 11-7, still a solid outing. Of course, you do have that tough competition with Camp Verde. We talk a little bit about that rivalry between the Cowboys and the Scorpions a little bit. I know you've been around the program for a while now. Is that one of the games that you're circling on your calendar whenever the Cowboys roll around in town?
Actually, my AD just called me about an hour ago, and we added Camp Verde, I think February 5th, whatever that Saturday is. So it's a rivalry game. I was born in Cottonwood, raised in Camp Verde. So Camp Verde, we were sort of blue collar growing up, and it's a good rivalry. I know almost all the kids. I coached a lot of the girls in club from Camp Verde. So it's a friendly but a good competitive rivalry.
Yeah, very much so.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry?
I was going to say the girls my junior girls now, they haven't beat Camp Verde. They're 0-4, so they're due. I told them, hey, this year you only get a few other chances.
I do very much remember that Camp Verde Sedona game where your youngest daughter, Helen, had an opportunity at the last second to hit a layup, and she had just missed it. I don't want to linger too much, but was that always the design play to go with Helen down low to sort of find a lane and get that layup, or was it sort of a broken play? What happened at the end of that game?
No, that a play. We practice that play every day in practice. We might use it twice a year. I stole that from Dave Monsibias, a great Mingus coach who coached my older daughter, Liza, but it's a sideline down play. Helen is ambidextrous. She can go to her left hand. We were on obviously the crowd side of the sideline, so we had to use a lefty closer. Unfortunately, J.C. Finley at 6'4", 275 happened to be there, and it altered it just enough that she missed it. But she knows about it. But we still work on those moves inside, and she won't miss it this year if she gets a chance, she said.
Well, we're excited to hopefully get to see that opportunity as Camp Verde and Sedona seem to be building a very strong rivalry. And as you mentioned, these juniors want a chance to beat these Camp Verde Cowboys and get an opportunity to get that under their belt. You mentioned your daughter, Mary, obviously graduating this past year. You do have one more daughter left at Sedona High School in Helen. She is a sophomore now. She was a freshman last year. But you also coached your oldest daughter, Liza. So how does it feel to sort of get an opportunity to coach all 3 of your daughters to go through the program?
They're all 3 different. Liza was a pure point guard, probably the greatest shooter ever to come out of this area. But she shoots 500 shots every day. Does not matter. We had a doctor dish there that would shoot them. And that was just her mentality. Mary, she had more blue collar players. She did the dirty stuff, but she could defend their best player. Had health concerns, missed a couple years of basketball with knee injuries. But and then Helen, she's a combo of both of them. She just, like I say, I told her she puts the work in like Liza, sky's the limit. I think she made All-State last year, honorable mention. But she's got to put that hard work in. I'm a firm believer. No one should outwork us as a team.
Right. Very much so. How have you been able to balance, obviously you've gotten all three of your daughters, one still making their way through the program, but basically all three of your daughters have been a part of the program since the beginning, since you took over at least. How have you been able to balance being dad off the court and being coach on the court?
You know what? Once we leave the court or the gym, it's over. We don't sit down and rehash anything at the dinner table or, those are off time. If they want to watch video on Huddle, I said they're welcome to it. But you know what? I'm not going to micromanage them because, hey, once you're out of the gym, let them be kids. That's my philosophy. And, you only live those high school years once.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Do you have any sort of advice for some parents who are trying to maybe find the balance of being a parent and also a coach? As you mentioned, you sort of, once you're off the floor, if they want to bring it up, you'll talk about it, but you're not going to harp too much on it. My dad coached me in sports and it was very much, we would have those long car rides home. We would talk about things. We would go back home and we would discuss it a little bit, nothing too bad at all. But do you sort of have any advice for parents who might be trying to find that balance?
My advice is, let them, if they want to talk about it, talk about it. But I hear too many stories, Coach. I get that long car ride home after a game, and I know I did whatever I did wrong. And listen to your kids. Don't believe me. They are smarter than you think. They hear things that you don't think they hear, and just love them afterwards.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that there is sort of a. I got an opportunity to speak with Michael Blair over at Northland Prep Academy, up in Northern Arizona. He's the soccer coach there, and he is much like yourself, Coach, coached all of his daughters throughout their program, and he's the same thing. The father off the court and coach on the field, and it's a lot of people can't strike that balance, but it seems like that you and Coach Blair and there are definitely probably others who are able to sort of find that happy medium of being a coach while also being a parent. Again, we were speaking with Sedona Red Rock High School girls basketball coach, Kirk Westervelt. Coach, you do return Helen. She is one of your big returners from last year. Who can we see sort of step in? You're only graduating one senior. That is, funny enough, it's also your daughter, Mary. And she is headed to ASU, currently studying in the medical field, just like her father, following in the footsteps of possibly being another Dr. Westervelt in an already very big line of Dr. Westervelts in the Westervelt family. But who can we really see step up this year and sort of fill those shoes of Mary Westervelt, considering that Helen is obviously still there?
You know what? Actually, we're lucky. I have an incoming freshman, Rachel Roderick. She's 6'2", in without shoes on. I played her with club the last couple years. Last year, she didn't have too good of experience at the junior high. They had a new coach after I left. But she's improved so much. And I tell you what, we're not going to skip a beat. And we finally have an inside presence that's not 5'9".
Yeah, it's almost a shame that JC Finley has graduated because now you don't get an opportunity to see those two match up. Obviously, JC was the big center in Camp Verde. You mentioned earlier sort of being that paint presence when Helen was trying to finish that layup against the Camp Verde Cowboys last season. But now you sort of find yourself with a JC Finley essentially in your new freshman. How has the development at the lower levels been for you?
As far as the incoming freshman or the coaching?
Incoming freshman, just in general, how has the lower levels been developing?
No, actually, we have 21 girls out, which I thought we'd only have 11 in the total program, but I have 7 incoming freshmen. The word got out, hey, Westervelt's not that hard of a coach as you think. And you know what? Some of them have never played in their life. We don't cut anybody at the school here. And it's been good. We want to start a program, not just a team, because I can make a team out of any kids for a year, but we want a program where it keeps on feeding itself.
Yeah, and that's great that you guys are seeing your numbers develop more. Obviously, unfortunately, the football program over at Sedona High School was cut short because there wasn't enough kids. There wasn't really a big following in it. They were a small 2A school, and it was already kind of tough for them anyway. But it's nice to see the basketball program, at least on the girls' side, is starting to see some more kids. I got a chance to step on that campus for the first time ever last year, and Sedona Red Rock is a gorgeous school. It is a beautiful facility for their football field. They've got a great basketball court. The school itself looks like a small junior college. It's very, very nice, and it's great to see that you guys are getting some more numbers and filling out a little bit more than you were last year.
We're very fortunate. Like you said, it looks like a small college there. The two gyms are better than most of the regular schools' regular gyms. I mean, our auxiliary gym where we can have the tournaments. So it helps having the facilities, but it doesn't matter. You could be in the Taj Mahal. If you don't have the players, it's not going to happen. And I think we got a great coaching staff. The kids played throughout the summer with the pandemic. Sometimes we're wearing a mask or what have you, but you have to learn how to adapt. And that's one thing I learned a long time ago in the Marine Corps is if you don't adapt to things, it'll swallow you up.
Yes, very much so. And we have been everything but, we've been doing everything we can to adapt to this whole pandemic, as you mentioned, even just practicing with masks on or maybe not being able to do everything that you want to do in practice. But despite that, Coach, how have you been able to prepare with COVID-19 still lingering here in Arizona?
You know what? We all the same precautions. We've been the whole summer. We took temperature. We took pulse oximeter readings. I brought pulse oximeters from the office, and just be smart. Don't hang out with those big parties, or if there's 30 people or what have you. And knock on wood, we've been fortunate to keep the school open still. The season obviously was closed down from the AIA till January 5th. Right. But that's out of our control, and we can just control what's in front of us, and that's how we look at it. If our gym's open, we're going to get better. We're going to work hard and stay safe.
Coach Don Burton, longtime athletic director and assistant girls basketball coach over at Sedona High School, has moved to Florida, which opens up kind of big shoes to fill, not only as the athletic director, but as the assistant basketball coach. Chris Johnson steps into that role. But I want to talk a little bit more about Coach Burton. What was your collaboration with him throughout the years, and what did he really mean to not only the girls basketball program, but the school itself?
Coach Burton, or Don, as I call him, he'd been in it for 40 years. It was like having a grandfather on the bench, but he was so knowledgeable about breaking down offenses, breaking down defenses, scouting reports. The last 3 games, I had a stack of scouting reports that looked like something at a university, all printed, color copied, stapled together. Each kid had one. So we're going to miss his expertise. But you know what? He went on to Florida, his health, I think, was a little issue as well, but he's doing well. I speak to him once a week. We still keep in touch. And, I told him, keep the margaritas ready out there for the summer.
Yeah, very much so. You're going to have to head down to Florida when we get an opportunity to travel a little bit more freely and go see Coach Burton. It's great that you guys still talk. I've had very limited interactions with Coach Burton. He is very much a business-focused man of very few words. But I know he did a lot for the school, and he was a wonderful addition to Sedona Red Rock. Obviously, you talking about just him putting together those scouting reports, a huge piece of the girls basketball program as well. Coach, what can we expect from the Scorpions this year, getting an opportunity to hopefully compete very soon?
I would say you're going to see ball pressure defense for sure. I don't care whether I'm junior high, high school, college, what have you. If you don't pressure the ball, you're going to get beat. My team's just going to dissect you apart. So probably a little bit more full court ball pressure. Last year we went 3/4, half court, but just because Mary, my daughter, having that knee brace, and I lose her, and sometimes you have to pull off the gas pedal a little bit. But I would say ball pressure, transition, just running the court, full offensive transition, and then now that we had the 6-2 post, we're going to work that ball inside a little bit more than we did. So
almost. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so it's a good problem to have. Where now you can work it inside instead of just working on our outside shot.
Yeah, very much so. You sort of, very much like, what was it, Virginia? Or is that where Ralph Sampson,
University of Virginia.
Yeah, University of Virginia center, went on to play for the Houston Rockets. Same thing, working that inside out. You've mentioned that you've got that big freshman now, and sort of transitioning from sort of the Mike D'Antoni-esque Phoenix Suns of that run and gun offense, and maybe slowing down a little bit and working inside the post. But nonetheless, Coach, we're excited to see some Sedona basketball. I know you're excited to get back out onto the floor and coach your team to a region title and hopefully a state title in the 2A. But Coach Westervelt, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and talking about the program. I do want to say thank you very much for your service to this country. I had forgot that you were a former Marine, so thank you very much for doing that. And we look forward to speaking to you when the season kicks off, Coach, and can't wait to see that big 6'2" freshman when we get basketball kicked off.
Well, listen, if you got, I don't know with the pandemic, but if you have a chance to do a live like you did last year, circle that Camp Verde date. I know Mark Showers is a good childhood friend of mine. Coach Showers and I grew up together. It's a friendly rivalry, but if you have time and your boss lets you, tell them you want to film the Camp Verde Sedona game.
I'll definitely try to get it up the ladder, Coach, so we can get out there and catch a couple Scorpions games outside of when they take on the Cowboys. But again, thank you very much for coming on, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Likewise. Have a good evening.
You too, sir. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back off the bench, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm Philip Katafamo. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. I'd like to thank you for watching and listening. Next week, we've got a bunch of great guests lined up, including AIA Executive Director David Hines, who will break down the delay to the winter season and what we can expect when games actually kick off. All of that and a whole lot more next week on Off the Bench. For all my guests, I'm Philip Katafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time.